So every year I do this kind of video where I reflect on the lessons that I've learnt in the time that I've been living here in Italy. Now this year I've been living here in Italy for 7 years, and so my 7th year has actually taught me 3 significant lessons, which I'm going to talk about in today's video. But if you're curious to know about what previous years here in Italy have taught me, then start with year 6. I'll link it up here and then you can go backwards from there. But if we're talking about year 7, well, the first big lesson that I've learned this year is that you have to take personal responsibility for your life. Now, I have to be honest with you, we moved back to Palermo after I'd been living in Salerno for 4 years. We moved there for 2.5 years, primarily because my boyfriend wanted to go back to the city where his friends and family live. And, you know, I was ready for a change as well, having lived in Salerno for 4 years. However, Palermo didn't bring us what we thought it would, and we struggled. And so now we are back here living in the Salerno province for this reason. And, you know, that for me was a clear example of taking personal responsibility for your life. Because if we had wanted to hold on to the dream of living in Palermo and, you know, decided to try to make it work, I think we would have bought very quickly into the story of suffering and struggle, which that city tends to get stuck in. And I don't know, I wanted better for our lives. I mean, honestly, Palermo for me really helped me to up-level my life. I made many improvements to my life living in that city. But on the other hand, it was an extremely stressful period for us. And I think those of you who are regular viewers of my channel probably can notice a bit of a difference in terms of how I look now compared to how I looked like 6 months ago, for example. It was a very stressful time for us, primarily because of work reasons centered around my boyfriend. And so for this, we took personal responsibility. We realized that if we wanted to improve our lives, we would have to make some changes. And sometimes it's difficult to make those changes, you know, like sometimes people are like, I've invested this much money into this move, I've come back for this reason, whatever it may be, I want to stick it out. But the fact is, after 2.5 years, we realised that our story would never change if we continued to live in Palermo. And so it's one of those factors. I talk about taking personal responsibility a lot, but I think I've really realised this year how important it is. And I can look back now on my life here, and even in the 4 short months that we've been living back in the Salerno province, I can tell you that my life has improved so much and I feel so much better. And that's what happens when you take personal responsibility. So that has been a really big thing for me in this 7th year of living in Italy. And also just realising that it's okay if you need to go backwards to go forwards. Because I spoke about this in other videos, like coming back to the Salerno province for me in a way felt like it was a regression, but it wasn't, because we're living in a different part of the Salerno province compared to where we lived before, and our life is different. We've come here with new fresh experiences that we've gained from Palermo. Like, it's not a repetition of the same thing that we experienced before. But I think it's this, not to be afraid of change, and also to realise that if you want a difference in your life, you have to do something differently. What is it that famous expression says? If you do the same thing and expect different results, it's like a version of insanity. There's that kind of famous quote that talks about this, but it's true. Like, take personal responsibility for your life. It's the biggest thing that I've learned. And if you're living here in Italy and you're not happy about something, take some responsibility for it and change things, do things differently, switch things up. I promise you, it will really help you to fall back in love with the experience once again. Okay, the second key lesson that I've learned in this 7th year of living in Italy is to always be true to yourself. Now, I've spoken about this quite a lot, but I lost myself at the beginning part of when I first moved here to Italy, because I wanted to fit in, because I didn't want to be different, and I didn't want to be this person that was separate from everybody else. But the fact is, I do have a particular mindset, I do have a particular viewpoint, I do come here with different experiences to people that live here, and so I have to embrace who I am as a person. And I've definitely leaned more into that, especially in this 7th year. I've leaned more into it in my interactions with people here. Like, I'm no longer kind of awkward or embarrassed. I'm just who I am. If you like me, fantastic. If you don't, I'm sorry for you. It's this, we're not meant to like everybody, right? It's impossible. And also I've learned it through my YouTube channel, through this very very way of communicating with you all. Like at the beginning, I was trying to create content that was like palatable for everyone. But now I've arrived at the point where it's like, if you get me, you get me, you're here, you're on the journey, you understand what I'm trying to convey with my content. And if you don't, it's also okay, because I'm not trying to appeal to everyone. And so you've just got to be true to yourself always. And I think the resentment builds and the frustration builds when people are trying to please everybody else, but they are not really being authentically themselves. Like, I believe that you will change as a result of living in Italy. Absolutely. I've changed a lot, but it doesn't mean that you have to lose your core values and what you truly believe in. Like, I have a very particular mindset. I'm very like a kind of a person that doesn't just talk but does. And I think that's really, really important. And it could be very different to the way that some people live in this part of Italy, but it's okay. You know, like, I'm being me. And I'm adapting to the life that I live here in South Italy, but I'm not losing who I am. And I think that is the most important thing that you must hold on to. Wherever you are in Italy, whatever your experience may be, never lose the true core essence of who you are. You might shape it and adapt it and mold it a little bit better to fit into your life, but don't lose your core essence of you, because it's a really miserable place to be, and I can tell you that from first-hand experience. And the third key lesson is that you must evolve with the experience of living here. You know, I speak about this a lot. People are so afraid of change. They're afraid of change because it's unknown, because it's risky, because people don't know what to expect. But essentially, contained within change is some of the greatest experiences and lessons that you'll ever receive. I have a poster in the hallway of my home that says, "Take the risk or lose the chance." And it was that motto that I kept in mind when we decided to leave Palermo and come back to the Salerno province. This was a huge risk in many different ways, but boy oh boy is it a risk that has paid off, because you lose the chance if you don't take the risk. And I refuse to live a life of regret. You must evolve with your experience. You must do things differently. You must change, and you must grow, and you must develop. And you know, like, I can see how I am in this whole experience as well, but also I can see like my approach to things is evolving and changing too. For example, like my podcast, I have kept my podcast an audio only podcast for like 86 episodes. But now I'm realizing I've got to evolve the podcast. I've got to make it a video-based podcast, because that's just the way the life is going. You know, we have to evolve, we have to change. You know, YouTube doesn't really support audio only in the same way it does a video. Spotify for creators is starting to prioritize video podcasts more so than just audio only ones. And so I'm recognizing the need to evolve and change. And so, you know, I'm going to wrap up season 2 as an audio only podcast, and then from season 3 I'm going to become a video podcast, because that is what is required of me in order to continue growing in this experience. But also I can think about it in like so many other ways, like even not connected to Italy. Artificial intelligence, let's talk about this. So many people resist artificial intelligence, AI. You know, they see it as being something threatening to jobs and to people's futures and to whatever it may be. But the reality is, if you don't embrace AI, you are going to be left behind. Maybe you don't have to do everything that, you know, AI requires of you, but you can certainly look to see how you can include it in your life to improve yourself in some way. You've got to learn to evolve. And you know, I noticed this a lot here in Italy during the pandemic, for example. There were some businesses that really had to completely 360 what they were doing and change and evolve in order to survive the pandemic, because there were other businesses that didn't. They didn't know how to transition into an online format. They didn't know how to transition to kind of home delivery rather than being like a customer facing experience. And as such, a lot of those businesses didn't survive. And so you have to evolve. You must evolve with the experience of living here. You are not going to be the same person year upon year as you were when you first arrived. And that is a really, really beautiful thing. And so if you're moving here, if you're watching this, if you're thinking about living here, let me tell you, change is inevitable, but it is a beautiful thing. And the evolution is something that you will look back on and be proud of. The journey that you go on, the growth that you experience, it's a beautiful thing to embrace. And so I think that is a really, really powerful lesson that this 7th year of living in Italy has taught me. If you've enjoyed this video, I think this is the video that you're going to enjoy next. This is about some kind of important conversations I've had over the course of 7 years that have really changed my outlook on life here. I will see you in the next video.